Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest AQA Insights webinar. My name is Nick Sanderman from AQA. I'm an account manager in the north of the country. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Pav Aujula from the Creative Education Trust. She will be talking to us today about a bit of a case study of how Creative Education Trust and Pav in particular uses exam data for analytical purposes and making sure they can get great value out of that in order for information towards school improvement. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we move on with Pav's session. Just to remind you that today's session is recorded. We're trying really hard to make these sessions as available as possible to all colleagues across the country. So we record and then put this recording up onto YouTube. From the AQA SLT playlist, which you can access from our website. So please do, if you've got colleagues that you think would appreciate watching this video afterwards, please do direct them to that. So let's get straight into it, Pav, and it'd be great if you could introduce yourself and a little bit about CET as well.
Hi everyone, so my name is Pav Aujula. I am one of the teaching and learning leads for Creative Education Trust. So I oversee teaching and learning, but also curriculum and assessment across our 16 schools, as well as having strategic responsibility for science across our primaries and our secondaries. So CET, who are we? We're a mat of 11 secondary schools and 5 primary schools, and we are very geographically dispersed across the country. We have schools from Stoke through to Milton Keynes, and we have 4 schools in Great Yarmouth. But one thing that all of our schools do have in common is that we serve disadvantaged communities, and we believe very, very strongly that education is at the heart of everything we do. We know the power of education. And to help us with this, one of the things that we have created is our frameworks for excellence. So our frameworks for excellence are there to support our school leaders with codifying practice around what excellence looks like. And you can see the 5 frameworks there, with personal development coming into place in September 2025. For the purpose of this session, the 2 that I'll take a look at and the 2 that apply to the science strategy and the overall strategy for raising outcomes are ones linked in with curriculum and assessment and teaching and learning. So our curriculum and assessment principles are there on the screen, our 10 key areas, and you can see that all of those 10 principles that we have are very sensible. They don't really have any impact on who is in government or who is in post. All of them allow us to think about curriculum as being this overarching theme, this key area that we want to make sure that we are pursuing really well with our students. And teaching and learning, we know, is at the heart of everything that we do. And our principles are there on the screen for you to see as well. Because we know that as school leaders, you can't get brilliant outcomes without these 3 key areas working together. The curriculum needs to be designed in a way that ensures that knowledge builds upon knowledge. It needs to ensure that sequencing is key, but that links in with our lessons. So how do we design our lessons? Are those retrieval questions that we put in at the beginning of lessons the best questions that we could do in order to build a schema? Does assessment throughout the lesson change the way that the teachers deliver the lesson? Do our end of topic assessments really impact curriculum change or impact subject specific CPD like we need to? Because we need to remember that when we look at data, it's not always about giving us answers, but it also gives us questions. So whenever we look at any data, we need to approach it with an inquisitive mindset of questions rather than one of assumptions. My session today is going to be focused on these 4 areas here. Sorry, Nick, were you about to jump in then?
That's all right. No, I was just going to ask you, you've just outlined a really detailed thought process that's gone into modelling your curriculum and teaching and learning and so on. And just wanted really, I guess, to sort of introduce the idea of what happens from results day. What do you do on that day, on that Wednesday, probably on the Thursday, when results come into you? What's the first thing you do? Where do you go first? And how do you sort of guide your process through that data?
These 4 areas here is where all of my data analysis, my data strategy sort of comes from. So I'll start the day off taking a look at the AQA dashboard, and then I'll feed into that some examiner reports, and then working with my heads of departments, it'll be taking a look at online services, and then the specification and the grade boundaries as well. So we'll start with the AQA dashboard. The purpose of this is that it's a one place where you can go to compare your maths performance on any given AQA paper. And this is great because it allows us to identify not only common areas of strengths, but also any trust-wide areas of development that we could have as well. And so when you log on to your math dashboard, it looks like this. And there's two main pages that I spend a lot of time looking at. So the first one is the component level statistics. This allows you to see how well each of your schools did in comparison to each other, as well as against the population, which gives you great insight. Because if everyone performs poorly, you can put it down to a hard question. But if it's just one school or one particular topic, then what we start to look into is the implementation model that we've got there. And like I said to you, this gives us our zooming in on our mean total percentages that I'll use as a comparison tool. The second page that I'm focusing on is the mean mark by item page. This allows me to identify what key questions across the trust that we scored poorly on compared to the population, but also the positives that we've had across the trust as well. And there'll be many of those that we need to make sure that we focus a lot in. So this example here, question 1.1, it's worth 3 marks. I can see what the population mean mark is and that of the centres. And then I can sort of start to think about conversations that I might hold with certain leaders about ways to improve those outcomes a little bit more. But I don't do that just based on what the data. It's really important that I cross-check that with the examiner reports, because we don't want any knee-jerk reactions there. So it's really important to look at the data and look inside those reports to see what were the common pitfalls, what skills did the question ask the students to use, and was this a case holistically? And all of that starts to feed into a report that I write up. So you can see the GCSE 2024 analysis that I've written in there. And this report is then shared with heads of departments and their line managers. I think it's really important to mention culture here, because you can't write a report like this with all of this information without having this positive culture. And as a MAT, we're firm believers that we sit next to our staff, we don't stand over them. And we want to support all of our staff. And in order for us to do that, our leadership behaviours of transparent authenticity and collaboration will be key. So this is a section from the report that you can see there. So it's taking looks at the GCSE chemistry. You can see the candidate numbers and you can take a look to see their mean marks as well. And then there's the extract that I've taken out from the examiner reports. So you've got the overall threads there as well, and then any key headline questions as well that might be useful for us to focus on. And then here's another example taken from a trilogy paper. So the numbers are much larger there. And you can see very clearly that all data is always triangulated because we don't want to make huge changes to our curriculum based on one particular question. That question isn't always going to come up again and again. But is there something or some lessons that we can learn from this? So what we start to think about is how do we make the implicit explicit about when we're marking things and skills. So for example, here you can see that there's the word it is a bit of a concern. It's come up lots of times where examiners weren't sure what it had referred to. So one action that we could take from a teaching and learning lens is, as teachers are live marking, making sure that students aren't using the word it and properly referring to whatever concept or whatever question it is that they are looking at. Because our examiner reports contain this absolute wealth of knowledge, and they highlight common student mistakes as well as providing insight into assessment expectations and offering guidance. So from this, for all of these reports that I've read, I've read 24 reports for science. One of the things that I've picked up is the need for concise answers. So making sure that students are using the terminology and are also making sure that they are writing constructively.
Amazing. Pav, you get a really good sense of the depth of the overview that you get from your trust from the analysis you do there. To what extent do you get your heads of department within each of the schools within your trust to engage with their own data, looking for the areas of their own areas for development and strength? How do you manage that, and what does that look like?
So heads of departments really take use of the enhanced results analysis. And what they will do is fill in a tracker, a bit like what you can see on the screen there. So this is for science, with CS being combined sciences. So heads of departments start to fill this in using ERA. So if you have just picked up a new subject, or if you line manage a new subject that you're not a subject specialist in, I would say to you to go through ERA in quite a bit of detail, Dylan Williams often says that every teacher needs to improve, not because they're not good enough, but because they could be even better. The same applies to leadership. And using ERA will really help you to improve outcomes across subjects that are doing okay. So if you're managing a subject which is a coasting subject, for lack of better terms, using ERA will really help you to zoom in on particular areas so you can identify how to improve outcomes that much more. So you can see here, I'm going to start to look at some of the assessment objectives that we have here. So for AO1, for example, you can see that for this particular school, they've done all right with AO1, a little bit lower, but we can start to do a little bit more work on that, thinking about what homework pieces we're setting and our do now questions. We take a look at AO2, we've done an improvement based on last year. So it's a great positive to start our conversations off with. Then if we start to take a look at the maths element of this, because I'm now moved from assessment objectives to the maths section of it, I can actually see that's an area that we need to develop further. So I've now got from a report for a department that's doing okay, actually, how can we get even better? Let's look at maths, so let's look at AO1s, and let's look at how we can use that cohesively. And what heads of departments will then do is they produce their own improving outcome strategy document, or rapid improvement plans, or rapid department plans, whatever your schools might call them. So you can see an example of a template for one that I've put together on the screen now. And what heads of departments will do is they will update this page here. So it's really important that they're using the information from ERA, looking not only just at the curriculum, so what questions did we score really well on, so which topics, and was it sales, was it magnification, etc., but also the knowledge and the skills, so we know what needs to work. And another example from one of my other schools is that we then take a look at the examiner reports, and again, what were the key threads that we've picked up there, but also what did the record paper say? So if predicted grades might be something that you need to focus on with your teams, or if we recall some of those papers for a student who we were absolutely adamant would get that grade 7 but didn't, well, what does the paper tell us? Is there things in there that we can learn and lessons that we can make to help improve outcomes for the current year 11s? And all of these will all start to build together this big picture or this big report. And a common pitfall that I've seen at senior leadership level is everything's very much kept at subject levels. So those reports that I've just shown you, or the rapid improvement plans, tend to be kept between one middle leader and their head of department. Now, I've been in over the past 3 weeks across 3 different schools. I've sat in on rapid improvement meetings across 10 subjects. And it's really interesting because what I now get to see is that there's a common area that we can start to look at. So one thread, for example, across one of our schools was about students not being able to write concisely or to use subject-specific vocabulary. So as a result, I'm working with the SLT team there to think about our literacy approach. We're going to ensure that there's CPD on modelling and metacognition, and we're doing that all the way through from year 7 all the way through to year 11. So you can see how all of that data will then fit into the entire school leadership part. It fits into your academy development or your academy improvement plan, whatever you choose to call it. It helps to become a focus of line management. So line management stops being here's a list of jobs to do, and it starts to become a bit more developmental, not only for the middle leader and their teams, but also for the whole school. And the final one as well, it helps to support is your CPD calendar. Are we focusing on the right things? Or are there some higher leverage items that we could focus on to make standards move up a little bit faster? Which then takes me to specification and grade boundaries. So a top tip, if you're line managing a subject that you're not an expert in, print off a copy of the spec. First question to ask and to annotate along there as well is to make sure you know how many papers there are and how the papers are organised. Are they MCQ based? Are they extended response based? And how the assessment objectives reflected? Because when you then start to go into your learning walks, you've got this paper copy, you can then sit down and take a look at what the students are completing in the lesson, that independent part of the lesson, and take a look to see what happened at the beginning. Were those do nows helping to ensure that you had a really effective schema being built? Is there something that's missing from there from a T&L lens? And this is taken here from the science curriculum bridging document that I write. So you can see that on the side, I've got the three AO1s, AO2s, AO3s that you'd see in the science paper. I've made sure that teachers and leaders are aware about their weightings. And I've then also kind of mimicked what it could look like in a lesson. Now, I'm not expecting every single lesson across the trust to be delivered in this 40-40-20 way. That's impossible. But by having these assessment objectives as part of our medium-term plans, so that people are aware of them, it means that they're writing their lessons and MTPs to provide opportunities for students to really apply their knowledge. We're giving students as many opportunities as possible to practice and to rehearse and really refine those skills that we want them to know. And grade boundaries. So you can see the trilogy grade boundaries up there on the screen. I really encourage my heads of departments to share these grade boundaries with their students. And it's not because grade boundaries are fixed, they never are. We know that they will change. But if we break it down from a component level, you can see that actually on average, you need roughly 50% to get a grade 4. So if I am a student who's really struggling with science and really don't like it, I don't think they exist in our map, but I'm just saying, it's great for them to know it's okay if I don't get those difficult areas, because as long as I get majority of the other sections, I can score enough marks in the test. It also helps to build resilience when we start thinking about children who might not answer some of the first few questions, those level 1 questions, because we can say to them, every MCQ that you complete, every one-word answer that you complete gets you one step closer for you getting those marks that we know that you could get in the actual paper. So sharing that information is really key. And then all of that information then helps to support countdown plans. So you can see on the screen at the moment an example of a countdown plan that I have in place. What you can see there is I've got lessons which are going to be common across all of year 11. So in this case here, we've got a lesson on quadrats, we've got a lesson on genetic inheritance, and we have a lesson on homeostasis. But what I started to do is start thinking about, to get a grade 4, to get that 50%, what are the kinds of questions that they need to know? So I would take a look at Exam Pro and start to pull off some of those questions and those styles. So you can see there, the aiming for the 2 section, for example, it's those ideas about name me some of these abiotic factors and drawing lines or circling them for a list. That would be the key skill that I'd want to hone in on. And I've done a similar example there for genetic inheritance, and then another example there for homeostasis. So I think as an SLT line manager, when you start to have those conversations with your heads of departments about countdown plans, how do they make sure that they're not trying to cover everything for everyone? How can we start to break it down just that little bit more?
That's great, Pav. And that's there's so much detail in there in terms of the levels that you're going into for planning and so on. I guess at this point it's useful just to pause for a moment and just share a reminder, I guess, for most colleagues that are on the call, where resources, you can find resources and so on to help with this process. So the first thing that Pav talked about were the examiner's reports. They're available on Centre Services under the subject assessment materials for each of the subjects. So there's a faceted search facility on Centre Services that allows you to narrow down to the specification of the year, and then you can have a look for all the resources available. Whilst you're on Centre Services, there are also materials from training courses that have gone by. Again, those materials are really useful, so please do ask colleagues to have a look at those. On our open website that students and the general public can also access, you will also find a CPD page that lists our common open CPD. So this term in particular, we've got things like Curriculum Connect meetings happening in every subject. Those are going to be focused this term on pulling apart the examiner's report and pulling out the headlines, the most important bits from the national perspective, and saying these are the things that we saw in the exams. This is features of strong responses and less strong responses. These are good topics and less good topics, and so on. So those are really valuable. So please do ensure that you're colleagues are all signing up for those specific exam sort of debrief meetings. And then obviously the resources that support this, we've got a wealth of resources across loads of all the subjects, and most subjects have got schemes of work in place which are definitely not as detailed as this, but act as a framework that you can then start, so you don't have to start from scratch. One thing that Pav mentioned earlier on, or in discussion with me earlier, was the idea of subject-specific vocabulary, and most of our subjects have got resources that support students and teachers thinking about how to develop subject-specific vocabulary. And that's not just science, as the example we've got here, but across a number of subjects where that is key to accessing higher marks and understanding some of the questions and the detail of some of the responses required. Particularly want to focus in, as Pav has mentioned, assessment objectives. The fact that we have quite a lot of guidance on our website for different subjects on skill-specific teacher guides, be that assessment objective 1 or 2. So typically assessment objective 1 is as a knowledge retrieval, understanding based assessment objective. Other assessment objectives are around application or higher order thinking skills approaches, and so on. So we have skill specific guides in many subjects to address some of those different lenses of assessment objectives that are used within the papers. Pav, back to you.
Thanks, Nick. So I thought it'd be keen to share some of the lessons that we've learned from doing this, because we've now done this process in science for 2 years running. So the first time I did it, obviously GCSE outcomes for 2023. One of the things that I had picked up on was that in one of our schools who were struggling for time for science, one of the recommendations that I had given them was that we could spend one form time a week taking a look at some videos. We could watch a video about doing a science practical, and then students would then complete questions such as writing out a method, drawing a conclusion, or writing out a risk assessment. And we actually found that the schools that did that scored much higher on those required practical questions than those schools who did not. Another area that I've picked up from 23 was that across the map, most of our schools performed weakest on chemistry paper 1. So chemistry paper 1 is the fundamentals of chemistry, and without it, many of our students are really going to struggle. So as a result, we had a huge drive on this. We produced readability booklets, which are booklets based on the specification, so in C1 in this case. And what you have there is some text and then some questions, so comprehension style things. What makes them special is that they have a reading age of 9. So we were really supporting those readers who won't be thriving so much in classrooms, but they might have to be removed from classrooms, internal exclusion rooms, students who are being at home. And so what we found was that actually really worked. Readability booklets, our countdown plans having C1 focus, any intervention classes having C1 focus. And in 2024 outcomes, we performed significantly better than the population on C1 as a culmination of those things. So what are we focusing on this year? Well, we are looking at an online platform. I think online platforms really help to revisit questions with especially those on AO1. We know that in most subjects, about 40% of your papers are kind of on AO1 skills. And it also exposes students to multiple choice, which will help students with those first and initial marks. So my first academy recommendation is that we have an online platform for homework. There are many out there. And then another recommendation that Team Science are going to be working on across the board is around literacy. And what I mean by that is, how do we read the question? How do we start to write a cohesive answer? We're going to be including spelling and definition quizzes, and just have that real focus on teaching and learning around modelling and around live marking as well. Although I say that last one is for science, like I said, I've now done almost 3 schools looking at raising standards meetings, and that seems to be a common area across many subjects. So probably one for everyone to potentially focus on. And that brings me to the end of my session. And so what I'd like you to do, please, is the chat button should now be open. I always end some of my CPD sessions with this. Just in one text box, could you put in what was your aha moment from this session? So was there a new way of thinking that you might not have been clear on before? What one action are you going to take? But also, what has this session affirmed for you?
I'm just going to give it a little while, Pav, in case other people put things in. Great, thanks for those people that are putting your comments into the chat. That's great. So we've got a comment there on the low stakes assessments like definition quizzes. They sound like a good plan. The dashboard breaking down the analysis for each subject further, which is great. Affirm the value of the examiner's reports. Brilliant, thank you for that. I like the affirmation there from somebody saying that they're doing the same thing as other people, so they're getting it right, which is lovely to see. That you're affirming that the practice that you're saying, talking about Pav, other people are using similar things, which is great. And that aha moment of using teaching and learning lens with the data, which is great. Okay, so a couple of people calling out things like cross-mat analysis available into the AQA dashboard. So I'll comment on that in a moment or two, actually, in terms of that availability and so on. Great, some really good things being called out. I like the calling out of the quality assurance using curriculum leads, looking at all the resources available and making sure they're using the analysis dashboard are great. Yeah. And the examiner's reports people are mentioning as well, which are a fantastic source of information, and we continue to work on modernizing them and updating them, and now you'll find in many of them headlines and key actions and things are pulled out for you rather than having to wade through several pages to try and get those. We've done quite a lot there.
I'd also add, Nick, the other thing that I've really liked about this year's examiner reports are the model answers that you've got and the commentaries around those as well, because that's new.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Yes, please, people are sort of talking about sharing those Curriculum Connect sessions. Please do share those. Please make sure that if colleagues go on and say, oh, they're fully booked, that they should click on add to waiting list anyway. We can always look, and if we can, we will try and add another session. If we can't add any more sessions because we do have a limit on colleagues who are able to present them, we will do our very best to share those colleagues that aren't able to make it, either with the resources at the very least, and potentially with other ways of accessing the information that we put into the Curriculum Connect, be that maybe a recorded version or something. Somebody called out the loving the curriculum principles. Yeah, I thought the curriculum principles, teaching learning principles, I think they were really fantastic. I really like those. Great, there's some really brilliant comments coming in. Thank you, everybody. It's really nice to see all of these. I like the action there for an SLT to read ERA before heads of department meetings, which I think is really great. Okay, keep those coming in and we'll move on, and please do keep commenting in the chat. There's been really fantastic things put in the chat, the chat there, so please do keep adding things in. So I'm just going to press that and move us on to the next slide. Pav, thank you so much for that insight. We've obviously talked this through in preparation, and I find it so fascinating whenever I talk with schools and trust leaders about the different lenses and how to look at this, and the support that is behind this, because this is definitely not a performance management process. This is very definitely a how can we do the very best we can for our students process. And I really love that essentially that sits at the heart of this, and the ambition here is for us to get better outcomes. So to help you triangulate the data in ERA of your own data, the JCQ trends data is available. It was available from results day, so please do use the links in these slide decks, which Phil will tell me has already been shared with you. So you should now have access to this slide deck through Access Planet, the platform that you use to book on. The A-level trends data and the GCSE trends data is there from JCQ, and it makes it really interesting reading which subjects have got stable outcomes, which subjects have had outcomes that are slightly down and go up, and so on. So please do have a look at the JCQ data, some really interesting things there. Obviously, you can also access the AQA level data from our exams admin area of our website. You'll see the national AQA statistics there in terms of proportion of grades at every grade. You'll also see the grade boundaries documentation there as well. And Pav showed us, but didn't dwell on it, which is interesting, the national grade boundaries for the whole exam, and also component level grade boundaries. And the component level grade boundaries are indicative only. It's not how we award them, but we know that people, when they do mock exams, won't necessarily do all the exams. So we provide boundaries for the individual components, the individual exam papers, so you can use the component grade boundaries instead of having to do the calculations from the national, the full grade boundaries. So that's just a little help for teachers and for heads of department in the classroom. Okay. So I mentioned curriculum professional development earlier on, and here's just a list of some of the things that are available, that's available now from our professional development page. So I've talked about Curriculum Connect meetings, exploring Summer 24. They're available for pretty much every subject. We've also got some other things there. If you want to know about how we set grade boundaries and the purpose of that process that we go through, I should say, to arrive at grade boundaries, then that's a really interesting session to give you a little bit more insight about assessment design and about how we maintain standards over time and comparable outcomes and so on. The Preparing for 25 sessions take the examiner's reports and take this is what we found from 24, and then say, and this is what to do about it. So this is looking forward to how can you improve students' practice in this coming year so that they can learn from the Summer 24 exam papers and improve their responses and so on for next year. And then some other courses in there. On the on-demand mark scheme guidance application is a chance to have standardizing discussions in department. Really good timing to use those is just around the mock exams, when you're just about to do mock exams, but to do them at any time is really useful, just to remind yourselves of the mark schemes, of what they're trying to achieve and how to apply them consistently. And within those sessions there is an opportunity to have a look at marked responses and make sure that you understand how the marks were arrived at, and then have a go at doing some activities of your own, practicing marking papers and then seeing whether or not you agree with the marks and so on. And you can see a whole host of other courses there that are available. I'm not going to go through any more of those in detail, but please do, Phil's just posted the link in the chat there. Please do have a look at those. Use the filters down the side because there's loads of training available. So please do use the filters and you'll find some really good courses there that'll suit lots of people. And then enhanced results analysis. If you need a reminder of enhanced results analysis, please use a link in that slide. It'll take you to the enhanced results analysis page. I appreciate that not everybody on the call was from a trust and therefore won't have access to the MAT dashboard. But please do use the enhanced results analysis pages. There's some fantastic screens and analysis that's available through that. We've already talked about CPD. That's actually the previous slide, not the next slide. And then resources on our website. Please do have a look at the website and centre services. You'll get a whole host of different resources, some of which I mentioned earlier on. And then finally, for any follow-up from today or any support that you might want across any AQA service or whatever, we have a team of account managers who are located geographically across the country, ready to support you as as much as they can do, and they can be gatekeepers to other services within AQA. They can signpost CPD and resources and support, and they can also support you with things like accessing enhanced results analysis and so on. So please do click that link, and that will take you through to a web page which details all your account managers across the country. So the questions have been coming in that chat as well. I'm just going to have a quick look across on the Q&A function and see what we've got going on in there. Okay, so there's some more comments into the Q&A. We've got some more affirmations going on in the Q&A as well. So form time revision is an affirmation going on in there, which is brilliant. Then make sure that we're driving literacy again going on. So we've had a question about sharing some of the resources from today. I will have a conversation with Pav at the end of the session and see which of the resources that Pav has mentioned today that she is happy to share, and then we'll work a way out of getting those to delegates that have been on the call today. So I don't know what creative will be happy for Pav to release into the wild, but we'll have that conversation and see what resources we can share there.
I'm also happy if anybody wants to get in touch via LinkedIn as well. Feel free to do so, because then there'll be some more information about some more things that we've got going on, including our Middle Leadership Conference as well.
Great. Okay, I'm just going to leave it for another minute or two. If anybody else has got any queries or questions, please do post them in the Q&A, or indeed now the chat is open, so you can post them straight into the chat as well.
Thank you.
So Pav, we'll draw it to a close. Leave the chat open, but we will draw it to a close, and I will mirror all the things that are coming into the chat there to say thank you very much for delivering what was a really thoughtful session, a really thought-provoking session, and I'm sure loads of people got some affirmation that they're doing the right things and some great ideas about ways that they could amend or add things into their different conversations they're having with subject leaders as well. So thank you very much. That was really great, and thank you all for attending, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and please do reach out to your local account manager if you've got any questions or queries or any follow-up. Many thanks.
Thanks all.